Hey guys, Sun here. I'm a privacy and a security researcher, and you're watching the Privacy Guides. Am I even recording, actually? Yes. Okay. So yeah, I was about to jump into another rabbit hole, and then I was like, damn it, Sun, you have to create videos for YouTube. I am super excited by exploring all kinds of things, and I'm super excited about sharing them with you, but it is a battle in my mind to choose which one to do. And I have like a huge line of content for you guys coming, some of which is going to be deeper, and some of which is not going to be deep at all, such as how to configure Spotify or Google for increased privacy, things like that. But today, I want to talk about Time Machine and APFS snapshots. And why am I talking about this today? Well, I recently reinstalled everything on my Mac, on my daily driver. There's a bunch of reasons why, but in a nutshell, computers tend to get sloppy over time. When you install apps, sometimes you install one that you kind of regret, things like this. And I really hate the process of reinstalling everything or restoring everything on my computer. But once it's done, it feels amazing. Not only is the computer more performant, it also is cleansed of all this crap that one installs over time and stuff like this. Now, first things first, what is Time Machine? For those of you who don't know, Time Machine is a really cool app developed by Apple that will back up everything that is on your computer on an external disk, and it will do that using deduplication. So a little bit similarly to the Borg series, well, files are going to be transferred to the Time Machine disk or backup, and then when files change on the computer over time, well, different versions of these files will be transferred as well. And when one deletes a file from the computer, well, that file is still on the backup. So that allows us to go back in time and recover files at different states. There is an app for that that you can just find typing Time Machine in Spotlight. And the Time Machine app, when you're on a specific folder, it will allow you to browse different versions or different states of that folder. So Time Machine is great. Time Machine doesn't use the most advanced cryptography when one encrypts the backups. Time Machine is opinionated and can go batshit crazy, so I always recommend having more than one backup strategy running at a time. I personally use Borg backup for all critical stuff. I actually also use, but I'm a little nuts here, I also use Veracrypt and rsync to back up my keys. So like passwords, two-factor tokens, stuff like this on an external SD card. And I use Time Machine for kind of like automated backups and versioning of everything. Now, the cool thing with Time Machine is when one reinstalls everything on our computer, we can use Time Machine, or if the computer breaks or if it's stolen, we can use Time Machine to reinstall everything the way it was on our computers. It's not something I recommend when doing a clean install, because you're essentially importing all of this stuff and all the mistakes that one may have done in the past on the computer. But in the context of a computer being stolen, it's a really quick way to get back on our legs. So hopefully, well, not hopefully, but I would recommend not storing the external hard drive and the computer side by side. It's always a good idea to put them in two different locations in the house. So unless the whole house catches fire in the context of theft, it's unlikely someone would steal both. So that makes it really good and resilient. So that's what Time Machine is in a nutshell. Now, the other aspect of macOS is APFS snapshots. Now, APFS snapshots is something that much fewer people know about. So there are a whole bunch of file systems. You guys probably know about FAT32, you know about NTFS if you're in the Windows side of things, you know about macOS Extended, and you likely know about APFS, which is a newer file system that Apple developed. Now, why are we not just using FAT32 like in the good old days? Well, among other things, I think FAT32 has a 4 gigabyte file size limit, which was very problematic in more contemporary times. But the other thing is macOS Journaled and APFS are file systems that are resilient to hard shutdown. So if you just like pull the plug on your computer or something happens and you force shut it down, it will be able most of the time to recover its state. Using FAT32, well, there's a lot of possibilities for data corruption and stuff like this, and that means that APFS or macOS Extended are much more resilient file systems. Why did we go from macOS Extended to APFS, you may ask? Well, APFS also has the snapshots, built into the file system. So what that means is it is really easy to create a snapshot of any state of the file system in time. And that is actually what Apple does before installing critical updates, for instance, on your Mac. It will create a snapshot so that if ever the install process goes bananas, it is able to roll back to exactly how things were before installing this. Now, that is a really powerful way for us to create kind of ephemeral backups to, for instance, be able to recover or roll back when installing an app that we might just want to try out, or things like this. I really love APFS snapshots for this. By the way, when we enable Time Machine, APFS snapshots are actually automatically enabled, and I think they occur every hour or so. So APFS snapshots are actually part of the Time Machine backup process. Now, a few things to note. APFS snapshots are ephemeral. The file system will kind of decide when to flush them out the system, and that is very different than Time Machine. Time Machine, as long as you have space on the external disk, it will be able to store as many backups as can fit. Okay, I think that is it. Let's get our hands dirty and set up Time Machine the way I believe is the most efficient. So the first thing that we want to do, and there's reference material, I'll link that in the description. And actually, while we're at it, sorry about this interruption here, I added a new feature and I'm pretty excited about it. And it looks simple here. So it tells you when a specific piece of reference material has been last updated. The reason why I did that is some of you asked me in the comments, hey son, what I see on YouTube is not the same as the reference material, what should I do? Reference material always wins over YouTube. YouTube is immutable. I cannot update or edit a video without publishing a whole new one. So reference material is organic. It is updated over time. Hopefully it will be peer reviewed. If you guys want to learn more about how to help peer review this content, I'll link that in the description. But what's cool here is when you guys see this and you see that the update date is more recent than an episode, well, that kind of gives a hint to this being more recent. And if you click on updated, it will actually bring you automatically at the right path in the GitHub repository to see changes that have occurred. So that makes the whole process very transparent. Woo! Okay, so step number one, we want to exclude paths from the Time Machine backups. Why? Great question. Time Machine will back up everything. So it backs, by default, it backs up everything. So like desktop downloads folder. If you guys are into photography or video and you import, say, 64 gigabytes of raw footage onto your computer and then delete 90% of it because there was just this one take you needed, it will back up 64 gigabytes of data. And that is not only slow, it is highly inefficient. So I always recommend setting up some paths that you consider ephemeral on your computer, paths that are like transition paths. The way I tend to do it is I add the desktop to the excluded paths, and I also add the downloads folder. Now on my specific setup, and again, this will be specific to your use case, I also tend to create a folder called temp in my home folder, and that I would also exclude. But for the sake of keeping things simple, that's what we need to do. And while we're at it, we are going to click Show Time Machine in menu bar, enable this here. I think in the guide it's done a little later, but yeah. Once this is done, the next step is we want to format this hard drive to macOS Extended, and that is really important. Here's why. If this is unencrypted and we decide to encrypt it using the Time Machine system preference pane, is that how we call it? Pane, panel? Anyways, it will encrypt the entire disk, all of it, including 2 terabytes in this specific case of data that doesn't really exist. It will encrypt the whole thing so that if ever a file was deleted, for instance, it will encrypt it to make forensics analysis much harder. Now this, in the context of a 2 terabyte drive that is a spinning hard drive, it will take forever. We're talking about days or weeks. Doing it the way we're going to be doing it here, using disk utility, will take a fraction of the time, but you need to keep that in mind. The way we're doing it here, it is essentially formatting the hard drive. It is not secure erasing information from it. So if you have sensitive information on it, well, it's not the purpose of today's episode to address this. I'll address this in a future episode, but you would want to secure erase the hard drive first, and then you would want to do what we're doing here. So hopefully that was clear. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. Or for that specific use case, perhaps you could also ask using the privacy guides, GitHub discussions. I'll link that in the description. This is kind of a sensitive topic, so it's best to ask it outside of YouTube because I don't see a lot of YouTube comments, and there are a lot, and I am overwhelmed a little bit. I'm thinking about ways of making this better, by the way. Okay. Now that we're here, we want to click on Lassie and we want to click on Erase. We want to select macOS Extended Journal Encrypted. Now, you guys would want to have a really robust password. I'm sure macOS doesn't select the best cryptography possible, and even probably worse, probably has a shitty key derivation algorithm used to go from a password to an encryption key. So it's likely that brute forcing this would be much easier than more robust encryption schemes. That being said, a password that is about 20 some characters long should be good for most use cases. And for those of you with sensitive use cases, you would definitely want to put like a 6 word passphrase, ideally words not in the dictionary. And if your use case is particularly sensitive, you would likely want to not use macOS at all. Okay, so I am going to put a really shitty password because you guys are seeing this on camera. So yours should be much, much longer. And now that this is done, we are going to erase. As I said earlier, if you have sensitive information on this, you could go in security options and then you could choose an option here. So from fastest to most secure. So fastest, this option does not secure erase the disk, blah, 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 a disk recovery, nah, nah. If you go here, this option writes a pass of random data and then a single pass of zeros, blah, blah, blah. This here should be fine for most use cases. If you want to go batshit crazy, most secure is good. But again, macOS is not really something that one would want to use for sensitive use cases. So this, I know I have secured, erased it using a Linux computer. So we're good. We can then go about erasing this journal encrypted. This is going to take a little bit of time. So I am either going to cut this in post-production or kind of tell you guys some stories. So yeah, I'll use this time to kind of update you on a few projects. Merch, I am super stoked about merch. I am not going to be generating money off it at the beginning. I see it as my Tesla Roadster project, meaning the price point will be a little high, but you guys will be encouraging the Privacy Guides project nonetheless by driving awareness to it, by showing you care. And if more and more people are interested in merch, I'll be able to mass produce it and bring costs down and make it available to everyone. So the people who are going to buy merch initially, you will be like the founding supporters of this initiative. And I still have to consider the sticker project. So I have this in mind as well. Okay, so back to this. Do you want to use Lassie 2 terabyte to back up with Time Machine? Well, yes, I do. And I want to encrypt the backup disk. So once this is done, you click on Use as Backup Disk. And then we can go about closing this. Whoops, done, close this. And it will start the initial backup in a few seconds. I don't think we'll have time to go through a whole backup while I'm recording this. So I'm going to need us to use our imagination a little bit. So I'll put this down. Initial backup is being done. A way of knowing is if you click here on the Time Machine menu bar item, you can then see that it's waiting for backup. I can actually click backup now to make sure that things are being backed up as we speak. And there is a way, by the way, to start backups. So, okay, say the initial backup is done and you want to do another backup. It's good to do those as often as you see fit. So you plug your thing in. Once it's in, backups will essentially run themselves. But there's a little bit of latency before they kick in. So they can be triggered as I just did here, clicking back up, or you can also run this, this command line here into your terminal, and that will run, it will start a backup. Now, once you have backups, and that's where I need your imagination, because the initial backup can take a while. We'll see. Yeah, it will likely take longer than this episode. Well, you can run this command, and that will list all of your backups. Now, this is kind of how it looks. It will list, it will list a backup, and this is kind of what it looks like. So it's going to list a bunch of those. And then if you want to delete one, well, you take an entry from this command, from the output of that command, and you run sudo tmutil delete, and you put it between double quotes to make sure that spaces and weird characters don't interfere with things. And it will say that, it deleted a total amount of X space. By the way, as you run out of disk space, Time Machine will delete the oldest backups, but you might want to decide which ones you want to delete. So you might want to manually prune the Time Machine archive, and this is how one would do it using command line. So that's pretty much all there is to it. If you want to restore a file, again, we'll have to use our imagination here, but if you go on Documents, for instance, and you want to restore a previous version of Countdown, what you would want to do is go there, and then you would want to pop open Spotlight and run Time Machine, not system preferences, but the application, and then boom, this is what happens. It kind of brings you here, and I can see that I have a previous version available today, but all the other ones don't exist because I didn't have Time Machine set up. So I can go back to a previous state and then click restore, and that will restore that version of the file on my computer. So Time Machine is really a neat way to browse through time. Yeah, and that's kind of why I like it. There's all kinds of reasons why I dislike it, but even though I'm not in love with Time Machine because it's a little opinionated and not as flexible as I would want, well, the reason why I like it is it just kind of runs itself, and it's a great way to have a recovery process in place, which one should always have. Okay, so now we're going to talk about APFS snapshots. So APFS snapshots are really neat. Once we enable Time Machine, we can also have access to APFS snapshots. So if you run tmutil local snapshot, this will list, I always do this mistake. I did it in my previous take. Sun. This is the command to create a snapshot. So say you're about to install an app and you want to be able to roll back in time to before you install the app. So that might be a good way to make sure that, for instance, you can not have this app dirty your operating system if you just want to try something out. I use that all the time when creating these episodes and stuff like this. Well, you run this command and it will say created local snapshot, blah, blah, blah. And then we can go about listing local snapshots, and this is the command line here. So I can see that I have two snapshots here. I have the one I just created, and I have one here that was created likely when we enabled Time Machine, so 9/22, so that's likely the case. Now we can go about mounting one of those APFS snapshots. So I think I mentioned this earlier, APFS snapshots are read-only, but nonetheless. So we want to create a folder where we're going to mount the snapshot to, and then we want to run this command, so mount_APFS-S, and we want to put that whole string here there, and we want to mount it to slash, no, not mounted to slash, we want to mount slash of that APFS snapshot to the temp snapshot folder. If we run this, it will mount it, and then we can go about opening that. And this here is a snapshot of this hard drive here that I use for this kind of staging computer. And I can go about browsing an exact state of the file system at that point in time. So that here point in time is today at 9:25 and 47 seconds. So that is really, really cool. Now you can also go about to unmount it. You just run this. Now, a really cool aspect of APFS snapshots is similarly to Time Machine backups, they can be used to restore our computer to a previous state in time. And that is done by booting our computer into recovery mode. And that's done by shutting down the computer, pressing power, and then on the keyboard holding Command and R, and then the computer will boot into recovery mode, and then you can use restore from Time Machine Backup, select the internal hard drive versus the external one, internal APFS snapshots, external Time Machine backups. And then you click, you choose a local snapshot, continue, and the computer will restore itself and reboot to a previous state. That is super cool. Now we can also go about deleting local APFS snapshots. So the first thing we want to do is get the dates of all of the snapshots, and then we can run this command here. So tmutil delete local snapshots, and we can just take, say, that previous one, enter, and it's deleted. So again, APFS snapshots are done at the file system level, so those operations are instantaneous, which is pretty cool. And we can also go about deleting all snapshots. All right, so I think I got a little excited here and I stopped my screen recorder instead of looking at this here. So yeah, what I had noticed is effectively when we go about deleting snapshots and stuff, it stops Time Machine from backing up because, as I mentioned, APFS snapshots and Time Machine are deeply interrelated. So yeah, I hope this was insightful. I'll see you soon in more content. I have a whole bunch of stuff lined up. Hopefully I won't slip into another rabbit hole. Yeah, see you soon. Bye.